Thank you for listening to Tex-Mex at the Northern Border.
Hello, this is Amanda Mendoza Hawkins, the Tex-Mex at the Northern Border. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is our first video podcast episode, and I am so humbled and thanking God for this opportunity to sit down with Pastor Julie. She's an amazing woman. She has 4 children. She's just a great sister of Christ. She's a beautiful wife and an amazing pastor with Tessera and Arise, 2 ministries actually at Rock and the Rock Church here in New Baltimore, Michigan. And she's just a beautiful soul that was born in Flint, Michigan, and now she is just a successful woman just doing God's work. And we just wanted to hear her beautiful story about how she came up and how she got pregnant in her late teens or early 20s. And instead of going down a road of negativity, she went down a road of a rainbow with God, and he gave her so much. So we just want to start with Julie today and just hear her testimony on how God has just blessed her so much and how she's now blessing others. Thank you so much, Julie, for coming.
Thank you so much for the very warm welcome.
Yes.
Very kind of you and really kind words. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's easy. It's easy with you because I've watched you for years from a distance. Like, this woman is really doing God's work. And I've just always loved all of the, I just almost call them services that we've been to at Arise and stuff. They've just
they
been very
basically
powerful.
are. Yeah, a service. We kind of formulated a little bit, try to be different so that it's more of an outreach based, but have the message implanted in there. So
yeah, I just find it's very powerful to have women's ministries because Jesus was the only one that had women in his ministry, and they actually pursed it. And then, really Christianity came through Mary Magdalene when he came to her first, when he came out of the tomb. And that's just kind of something that's touched my heart the past few years when I've been deep in just, diving more and more deeper into the word. And then God has life come through women.
yes,
All life comes through women. And then if you want to get to the Father, you have to go through Jesus. And so just seeing the way that your ministry has grown over the years from a smaller room to now the big sanctuary, it's very moving. And God's working, and just Jesus is just holding your hand. So,
yeah, it's been awesome.
and just like I said, I just want to start from the beginning and just tell us about your childhood and how you came up and how God was an influence or not an influence yet. So
Yeah, as I was thinking through my story, I'm like, oh, I feel like I have lived 10 lives when I go back and think of everything that God has brought me through. And it was an awesome opportunity to just recount the faithfulness of God every step of the way in my life. And so I thank you for that opportunity to kind of reflect on my story as a whole from the beginning and up to today, and how God has just continued to be faithful and has grown me in my faith. I was born in Flint, like you said, and grew up in a little town called Swartz Creek. It's a suburb of Flint. And I was one of 5 siblings.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So I was right in the middle. I have 2 older brothers, a younger brother, and a younger sister.
Oh, nice.
And growing up, it was pretty tumultuous with my upbringing. My dad struggled with alcoholism, and when I was a senior in high school, my parents got a divorce. And it was a really difficult time to grow up in that. Anytime you're going or dealing with alcohol in the home and dealing with divorce, there's just a lot of chaos going on a lot of the time. And so I had a level of faith. My mom always took us to church. So I attended church regularly, but I would say I didn't really have that deep personal relationship with the Lord. I sometimes think back and it was like I would sit and listen to messages, and it was kind of like Charlie Brown's teacher, like,
Wah, 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 wah. Yeah.
like I would listen to stories, but I had no idea how that applied to my life. And so there was like a disconnect in my faith, but I definitely believed in God. And I knew that I accepted Christ, but I just didn't know how to grow in my faith or to even develop that relationship with Christ. And so my parents got a divorce the year that I graduated high school, and then actually remarried each other a year later. So
I hear this from Michigan. Now you're the 11th couple I've heard that of. There's something in the snow here. It has to be. Because I've heard of couples actually, people moving out of the state, and then they come back and remarry again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I had to stop you on that because that's literally now I'm just keeping a tally in my head.
Yes.
I've never heard that before until I moved to this
here.
state. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. They remarried. I was already 18 when they remarried, and it was a difficult time because of everything that we went through as children. I really didn't connect with my dad very much growing up. I didn't feel loved, and because of that, I really was seeking love in all the wrong places.
Yeah.
So I didn't have this desire for them to get back together. I didn't care, but they got remarried, and then shortly after just a lot of tension in the home, I was 18 and I ended up moving out.
Yeah. It's kind of, I just was renting rooms and sleeping on the floor of like friends' houses. It just seemed like a lot of people I knew were like, hey, I've got a house with my boyfriend and we need some bedrooms rented to pay the rent or whatever. And I'm like, I'll stay this month or a few weeks, and I would just go home once a week and just do my laundry and steal some food from their pantry. Not steal, but take it. You know, like I'm taking
Borrow,
food. No one's here though, but I'm just putting it in bags and leaving. Yeah, so I can kind of relate. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to escape, and so I was working like I had like 3 jobs, everything that I could do just to get an apartment and pay for myself, and then. I ended up getting involved in a relationship that was not a healthy relationship at all. It was a pretty toxic relationship. I never saw a healthy relationship modeled, and I didn't know what that
looked like. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you grow up, when there is addiction and things in the home, there's a lot of just toxic communication, the way that you manage your emotions, the way that you communicate with each other. And so I didn't learn how to deal with things or manage things very well at all. And so I was involved in this relationship, and I wasn't being treated well at all. But at the same time, I didn't realize that that was necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
And so I was, I had my apartment and everything, and he was living with me, and ended up finding out that I was pregnant. I was a couple months already pregnant, but I think I kind of knew, but I didn't want to actually admit it.
Yeah.
So, so I was already a couple months pregnant when I found out, and when I shared with my boyfriend that I was pregnant, he at first was somewhat supportive. He said, okay, let's figure out like what our options are. Let's like everything. Let's like figure out with abortion, and then figure out like what kind of help and resources. And so I was like, okay, that sounds all right. In my heart, I felt like I knew abortion was wrong, but I was so far away from God. I didn't, I was willing to explore it.
Right.
And so I made an appointment with an abortion clinic to go in, and they told me that I would have to come in and have a consultation before I could schedule. So and they want you to come in right away. So it was like the next day that I had a consultation scheduled. And as we pulled up, to the office, there were a group of women and men praying like kind of across the street. And as I was walking in, one of the women kind of motioned for me. She said, "Come here, can I just share something with you really quick?" So I walked over to her and she handed me a pamphlet. And she said, "Just please read this while you're in there." And so went in, sat down, and I was terrified.
Yeah.
I was so scared because I knew my life was going to change forever no matter what.
Whatever happened.
Yeah,
Right.
no matter what decision I made, I knew that my life was forever changed. And I remember sitting in the waiting room and looking around and seeing so many other girls in the same situation and with that same look of fear on their face. And I was shaking, and I started to read the pamphlet, and it talked about, resources and hope, and that that there were other options. And so the nurse eventually called us back. We went into the room for the consultation, and she basically told us that we were too young to have a child, didn't make enough money, weren't married. It would be
So she was all negative.
Very negative. Said that we
And
wouldn't
fear
Yes,
mongering.
Yeah. She said that we would basically be providing a horrible life because we didn't have what it took to be good parents. And so she said abortion is very simple. It's a 2-minute procedure, and
she never even said have the kid and give it up for adoption.
Nothing
anything.
like that.
Yeah.
No, she said it's a 2-minute procedure, and your problem's over, and then you can go on with your life. And we walked out of that clinic, and my daughter's father said, "If you don't choose that, that's too easy of a solution. If you don't choose that, I'm leaving, and I don't want anything to do with you or this baby."
Wow.
So I had that pamphlet still in my hand, and so I begged him if he could please just take me to this place. I said, "This woman gave me this pamphlet. She told me they can help, and I want to explore another option." So he took me there, and there were 2 women there that when I came in and took us in a room and showed us a video of like the realities of abortion, and that if you make that choice, this is actually the procedure that you're going to be going through, and these are the consequences that you're going to live through.
Because they're not as easy as they tell you.
It's not.
Because I find that a lot of people have told me they've had accidents afterwards. Like, things weren't done properly, and all this kind of weird stuff would happen to them, and then fertility problems later on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's definitely not just a quick, simple procedure. I mean, there's emotional consequences as well with that. And and then they offered the resources that they had. But right in the middle, my boyfriend at the time, he got up and he left me there because he didn't want to hear it. Yeah. And so I was just broken and terrified and upset, and they just comforted me. Eventually he did come back to pick me up, but I'm just so grateful that I made the choice to give my daughter life and not choose to both the pressure from him and let the lies that were told about how quick and easy it is to solve my problem. That I didn't go down that route. And it definitely was a hard decision. It wasn't something easy. It was terrifying because my boyfriend left me. He took everything, left me, and to this day my daughter is 27. He has not had anything to do with her.
Really? He hadn't seen her or anything or met her?
A couple of times through her life, he has seen her, but no relationship whatsoever.
Relationship.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And but God has been so faithful through that, and through the gift of life to my daughter. And
how'd your parents take it?
that was a whole nother story. So my kids
oldest
are
daughter.
biracial, but my daughter is biracial, and my dad grew up in, you don't date outside
black
your
guys,
race.
yeah.
Outside of your race.
Hispanics are like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stay within your race.
My grandparents, my grandpa's parents, I guess my dad's grandpa did not show up to their wedding because my mom's white and my dad's Mexican, and he wanted them to marry Mexican girls. And so it's kind of the same thing, like kind of staying with your own kind. And I've been a mixed breed kid my whole life, and I'm just like, that's who I am, man.
Yeah.
So I can kind of relate to your kids and stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was. My dad did not take it well at all, and neither did his side of the family. My mom, was okay with it, but after my daughter was born, my dad's heart started to soften towards,
After he saw her and got to know her.
Yeah. My grandparents and his side of the family has always been removed since then, because I think it was just too much for them to be able to handle. Yeah. So, so it was challenging.
Yeah.
To
I know.
say the least.
I keep telling everybody's like, everything's fine. I'm like, it is on the surface, but it's not an I Love Lucy episode, and I kind of grew up thinking, well, why is it a big deal? Why is it a big deal if we go here or there, or why can't we not talk to someone after, so I grew up in a mobile home park, and there were, I guess, I don't know if I can't call them skinheads because they had mohawks. And I'm like, who has mohawks in Texas? I remember as a kid, isn't everybody a cowboy when I was a kid? But, my dad was just like, don't talk to anybody because they're going to be upset. And I'm like, who's going to be upset? And I'm like, you don't even speak Spanish. And I'm like, but it was a reality that I was, didn't really take to heart until it hit me a few times. And then even then I was just like, whatever.
Yeah. I think I had a little bit of that rebel in me too, because I was like, so I didn't really care what was culturally acceptable.
You're right. Yeah.
So
did you go to church after that, after you had her?
I didn't. I actually was I was so broken, and I just from never really having that relationship with my dad where I felt loved and nurtured by a father. I was
just really seeking
love and attention, and I was really heavily into like going out every night. I really actually right after I gave birth to Brianna, I really struggled to bond with her because I knew that I was making the right choice, but it was still hard. My life was totally upside down. I was 20 years old. Her dad's life went on like nothing ever changed, and mine was
forever changed.
And upside down, and a huge amount of responsibility, and so I struggled to bond. Looking back, I didn't realize that I wasn't really bond. Like at the time, I didn't realize that, but I wasn't as nurturing and giving her the attention that I should have, because I was so self-focused and searching for my needs to be met. And then it just continued to just snowball until she was 3. And that's when I think back, and it was like, I just picture like this soldier on a battlefield. Like I felt like I was so wounded, so broken, and I couldn't even go another step. And I knew I needed God, but I didn't know how to really like get to him.
Right.
You know, so my mom's mom, my grandma, when I used to stay the night, every once in a while at her house, she would always pray the Lord's Prayer with us before we went to bed. And so I was like, okay, well, I know the Lord's Prayer, so I'm going to
Start there.
I'm going to start praying the Lord's Prayer. And I ended up saying, okay, I'm going to get up and read my Bible. And I got up like the next morning and I turned on, I was going to watch music videos back when
MTV. Yeah, that's
VT
I know.
and
Yeah,
MTV.
starting.
Yeah, so I turned on and there was there was a pastor on the TV, and because it was in the early morning, and I started hearing. I just stopped and listened, and it was the first time I heard like where the Word of God was making sense to me, where like that it applied to my life, and God just started transforming me from that day forward. I just gave my whole heart, my whole life, everything to the Lord, and He just began a work in me from that day forward. From I was 26 years old, and no, I wasn't. I was 23.
You were 23 because she was
yes, 3. Yes.
Yeah. So she's 3, and you give your life to Christ, and you were woke up instead of listening to music videos. You grabbed the Bible.
Yeah, I started reading the Bible. Started just really seeking God with everything that I had, and God just started revealing Himself to me in a way that I had never experienced before, and showing me that His Word is for me today. And like I said, when I was younger, it just felt like stories. You know, you hear stories of Daniel in the lion's den and Noah in the ark, and it just does not seem relatable.
Right.
And so God just, through the teaching that I was under, just began to show me that it was relevant for me, and that He loved me and cared for me and had a purpose and a plan for me. And that's when really my life just began to completely change. So I ended up getting connected with a church in Southfield that I was visiting. I lived in Flint, so it was
A couple of hours. Maybe?
yeah, it was
Is it
like
2
an hour and
hours?
a half or so to get there. So it was not something that I could
Go every
attend
week.
and go.
Yeah.
So I really felt like the Lord was leading me to that church.
How did God bring you to that church?
Well, so the pastor on TV was having a event. He was like coming to Detroit.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, so he was the pastor that I was listening to every single week, and I like went. It was back when there was cassette tapes, so I like ordered all the cassette tapes from all the Sunday services, and was just really growing under his teaching. I was still attending church
In person, but you were this extra. Yeah.
Yeah, I went back to the church that I grew up in, that my mom went to, because I knew that I needed to be, rooted in a home church as well.
Right.
But this teaching just gave me such a deeper level of understanding. And so when this pastor came to Detroit, I was like, I want to serve in at this event that he's there. And so I arranged, I got a babysitter for the weekend, and I served at the conference that he was at in Detroit. And while I was there, I met some people from the church in Southfield. And so I then got connected with them, and they had actually like a singles group. I was single, and they invited me to a few of the events, and I just got really connected to the church through that. And so after a little while, it was a couple years of going back and forth just for events, or actually probably a year and a half. And then I just really felt like I needed to
Get closer.
move and raise my daughter and get really plugged in. And so God opened the door for me to get a job. Previously, I was working at a chiropractic office, and I was like at poverty level.
Right.
So I had to have public assistance for medical, for
Of course.
food,
It's
for
expensive
daycare.
to have a child.
Yeah. And I just, while I was grateful for it, I just always struggled. I just struggled because I didn't, it's tough when you're in the system too. You get
It's
treated.
such a blessing that though we have that in this country. I know that that's kind of sometimes a double-edged sword. Some people take advantage of it. But the majority of people don't live on it forever. And it's something that they need when they don't have family that can help.
Yeah.
Not everybody has parents that can stroke checks.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
didn't have that.
Yeah.
I remember going in my 20s when I was married and asking for a $250 car payment, and my armpits were sweating a river. And I'm just like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So, you know, when you don't have those type of parent resources, or you're
Yeah.
too scared to go to your parents,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, those really do help.
Yeah. And I was in my 20s, and, you know, my parents kind of raised us that, like, you make your own choices,
Yeah.
and you have to, you know,
have
kind
to-
of live with how things play out. And so I just never, you know, I felt like I was always treated like a second-class citizen when I had to utilize the resources and stuff, and which I was grateful for, but I got to a place where I'm like, Lord, I want to be able to be to a place where I don't
Need them.
not dependence, on the system. And so God opened the door, and and it was, I think back, and it was just amazing of how, like, I was talking that, I'm looking for a job, and then somebody happened to hear, and they happened to hear, you know?
Yeah,
When you're
God,
like,
God
just
placed that
aligns,
person, next
aligns
to
your
you.
footsteps. And then she heard that and ended up getting me connected with a company, and they offer, and she really coached me and helped me, which I know was the Lord's hand, because she, you know, I had explained, like, my situation, that I was looking for a job, and that I, you know, the reasons why I wanted to leave. And she knew the skill set that I had. It was like office administrative management,
Yeah.
things like that. And she coached me, though. She was like, you need to ask for X amount of money, you know, which to me, I'm
That's
like,
so smart
Yeah.
to have people, because
Yeah.
you get nervous. And I undercut myself on my first
Yes.
job out of college, $30,000 a year. I
Yeah.
should have started at 60. I started at 30.
well, I was operating in poverty level, so my mind wasn't even like, I can't ask for that, you
Yeah.
know, like, so she really helped me to
Have the
understand.
courage
You have the courage
and
and
the
know
knowledge.
Yeah, actually, the knowledge and understanding, like, no, this is what it's worth for
Yeah.
you to ask for. And so, which was actually like almost 3 times what I was making previously. And I ended up getting the job. It was such a blessing. I still remember, like, being in my car, and wait, was I in my car? Because I think cell phones were, it was 1999.
Yeah.
I know I got my first cell phone in 1999,
Yep.
but
The flip phone, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
it was.
Yeah, or
Yeah, it
it's
was
the one
really
that looked
pretty
like the
big.
remote control, the Nico or the Nikon one. It was
it was actually pretty big. I can't remember if I was, maybe I feel like I was in my car, so I must have been using my my cell phone, but I called and told, said thank you so much, but I no longer need any assistance, and I had medical insurance, and
What a blessing.
it was
Yeah.
awesome. So, so we got moved down to, we found an apartment in Farmington. My daughter was in kindergarten in 1999, and
Those
so-
were good school districts back then. I know
Yeah.
that because when I moved here 6 years ago, I met some people that were in their 20s, like, we went to school there. We're so, it was so good. And I was like, really? And then I turn on the TV and they're like, 6 schools closing in Farmington. I'm like, no, why?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it was good. It was an awesome, it was a blessing to be able to make the move. It was a big move of faith to trust God to do that. My job was downtown Detroit, so I had to, and then kindergarten was only half a day, so I
Yeah.
had to like find resources for
her in the
yes, for the
afternoon,
other
yeah.
half, and then it was an hour drive, and traffic was terrible from down, so I was always trying to beat the clock to pick her up because they charge you like by the minute after 6.
Yeah.
So yeah, but
Share the story about how you got there and you had all these unexpected expenses and then how God provided. Because I just find that so powerful.
Yeah.
When Jesus says, "You fools, don't you know that God provides? Like, why worry about the things the pagans do? Because he never lets the birds go hungry.
Yeah.
So why would you think he'd let you go hungry?" And
Yeah.
when I heard you tell that story, it was very powerful.
Yeah, it is probably the single most impactful time where my faith was challenged and grew, and it has defined my faith, actually. So I had spent every dime that I had to get moved down to the apartment, and I started my job. I had my first check. And because I had just moved in, there was some other expenses that I had to take care of. There were some bills and things that I had to take care of out of that first check. And one of the very first things when I became a new believer was I made a decision. I learned the importance of honoring God through the tithe. And so even though I was at the poverty level, below the poverty level, I was a single mom, I made a decision that was just like a non-negotiable. It wasn't anything that I was even going to like stress about or worry about or even say, I wish I could keep this money. I made a decision that I was going to be a tither regardless. And so every other week when I got paid, it did not matter what else I had. I would give God my tithe. And, even though I was low income at all of, those few years, I was never like stretched where I didn't have my needs met. So I moved to the apartment in that first paycheck, and I had the extra expenses because we just got moved in. And off the top, it was non-negotiable. I gave my tithe, and after I did all the other calculations of everything that I had to take care of, I had $5 left. And I had 2 weeks until my next paycheck, and I had a kindergartner,
gas to get an hour, 2 hours of driving
we
a day.
needed food. I had to get to work. I just started
You
my
already
job.
gave up the resources, right? Because you're leaning on God at this point.
Yes. So, yes, I had spent every dime. I didn't have anything. So, except that $5 that was left after everything. And so that was a Friday that I got paid and had to divvy that all up. I went to church that Friday night, and we had a guest speaker. And at the offering time, I opened up my wallet, and I had $5 in there. And I just looked at that $5, and I said, Lord, that this $5, it can't buy me the groceries I need, the gas that I need. Like it can't do any of that. And so I just took the $5 and I put in the offering, and I just said, Lord, I just trust you with everything that I have. I believe you brought me down here, and I believe that you will take care of me. And so I gave that $5 in the offering and went home that night, and I opened up my Bible, and I spent that evening and all of Saturday just reading and rereading about the children of Israel. of how God delivered them from bondage from Egypt. And for 40 years in the desert, he supernaturally provided for them every single day.
Yeah.
So I said, Lord, you're the same God. You're the same God that you provide to sustain life for your children for 40 years. I got 2 weeks.
I got 2. I know. This is just 2 weeks.
2 weeks that I Lord, I don't know how we're going to do this, but I'm going to trust you. Like, I believe that you care for me. I believe that you are not some distant God, you know, that you know me intimately. You know my situation. I have not to say that, like, I've honored God with the tithe, not to get, but I've honored God. And I know that that when we honor God, that he is faithful.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that we're not going to have hard times and things aren't going to happen. But so I just continued to pray and seek God. And I was like, Lord, I don't know if manna's going to show up on my floor or gas is going to just supernaturally, like, keep on refilling in my tank. I don't know. Like, I'm not going to worry. But I could not think, like, the 2 weeks was too long of a time to even think about how I'm going to get through this. So I'm like, I'm just going to take it day by day. And how the children of Israel, when they were in the desert, God would not allow the manna
to be stored.
Yeah. It would be eaten only on the Sabbath. And so I'm like, Lord, there must be a message in that of daily dependence, of that, to depend on you daily. So I'm not going to think about the 2 weeks. I'm going to think about today. And, you know,
because Jesus says, don't worry about tomorrow. Worry about today. Yes. Today's problems are enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we got through that day. The next day was Sunday, and I got my daughter. We went to church, and the sanctuary is really large. It seats 5,000. So it's not a place that you, like, for the most part, see somebody you know. I mean, it was new faces all of the time, and the ushers place you in a seat. So I came in, and the usher put me in a seat, and a few moments later, a woman came back. It was evidently her seat. She got up to use the restroom. I offered to leave, and she was like, no, it's okay. I'll go find another one. And during the service started, and during the offering time, at this particular church, we would fill out our offering envelopes, and then as the pastor was praying, we would just hold our offering up as just like offering to God, just in the envelope.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so I had given all of my, I had already given my tithe and my last $5. So I just held my hand up during that time. And the gentleman sitting next to me, he leaned over, he said, hey, do you have an offering to give? And I said, thank you. I already gave my offering. I already gave my offering. I'm good. We're good. I already gave it. So thank you. But he reached into his wallet and he gave me $20, and I thanked him. I took the offering envelope and I filled it out. And when the bucket came through, I put it in the bucket. And then the service started. And about 20 minutes later, he leaned over to me and he said, do you have any money for yourself? And at that moment, I couldn't even say no. I mean, my eyes just began to tear up and just stream down my face. And I just said no. I didn't expect him to ask me that question.
Yeah. I mean, how do you answer that?
Yeah. And
because most people would say, are you good? Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
And I say, no, don't say that. Because you don't want to stop God's blessings. He asked me a very
specific question. He said, do you have any money for yourself? And when I said no, and then he started talking to the gentleman next to him, and then within a matter of moments, they just started putting cash in my hand, and I had over $200 placed in my hand, and I cried the entire service. But that time, that moment, that situation grew my faith to a place where no matter what has come my way since then, I have taken that same stance of, God, I trust you. I don't know how this is going to work out. I have no idea how you'll provide, how things will even work out for my good, but I trust you and I believe you, and I know that that you will take care of me, and trust in his sovereignty. And with that, because when you try to plan it out, we're always disappointed.
Yes.
Anyway,
Yeah.
But it was such a moment, a time of faith that it has shaped the way that I trust God for the rest of my life.
Yeah. I keep reminding myself, like, my plans are this perfect, beautiful, vase of flowers, but God has a vineyard, a beautiful vineyard of plans for me. And so I need to stop trying to put everything in that vase and just let him build a pasture and build a field. And I keep telling myself that, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to continue. Every time I hear that story, I feel like I heard it one other time that someone was telling me about that, because a few years ago I was going through medical bills, and I just didn't know how we were going to get them paid, and I was only eating like one meal a day to get through them and to try to get as much money paid off as possible towards it. And it was just, it was stressful. And I was still trying to remind myself that. So now I always try to remind myself of, the Israelites, like, learn from that lesson, learn from that lesson. And so now when I get anxious, I just start going through all the blessings that God has given me since I gave my life to him. Like, thank you for healing my marriage. Thank you for giving me a baby. Thank you for giving us a job. Thank you for moving us to Michigan, and all these other things. And I just start running through it, and it calms me down. It's almost like the Holy Spirit. And that was not me before, but I know it's like the Holy Spirit saying, let me dwell with you, hold Jesus' hand, and just calm down. And I always try to remind myself that. And then, in Matthew, I think it's in Matthew 22, Jesus goes, whatever you ask for, you shall receive, as long as you have faith. And so I just always try to remind myself that. But it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
And so how many years went by until you met your husband?
So we moved to Farmington in 1999, and then I met my husband in 2000.
Okay.
I met him on the second day that he arrived in the U.S.
Wow. It's like you're coming to an America's. Yes.
Yeah, actually, so my husband is Ghanaian, from Ghana, Africa, but he was born in London, England.
Okay.
And so he was born in London, and then when he was about 6, his family moved back to Ghana. He was raised in Africa, and then when he was about 19, he went back to England and went to school and graduated from university as an engineer.
Wow.
And so he has a sister that lives in Novi, and so he graduated college and then came to the U.S. to visit his sister.
She must have been like me. She was tired of the heat. I was tired of that Texas heat. I'm like, I'm done. The bugs, roaches as big as rats.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm done with it. I'm done.
Yeah. So he just arrived the day before. We were having a company picnic, and his nephew was married to a lady who was a design intern at my job. And so I worked with her, and she brought him to the company picnic the day after he arrived, just to kind of show him around town. And so I ended up meeting him there.
Wow.
So, yeah, we ended up talking about church, and he was saying that he wanted to look for one. So I was like, I go to a great church. I'll come pick you up. And so that started everything.
That started the friendship.
Yeah.
How long did y'all date before you were married?
So we were dating. So my husband, he came, and he intended to come and and have a student visa to go to school. So he got enrolled and then applied for a student visa, but he didn't realize you can't do that. You have to come on a student visa. You can't like be here and get enrolled and like submit. So he didn't know that, and so it had already been 8 months before he received a letter saying that you can't do that. You have to leave the country.
Oh.
And so we had been dating that whole time, and we knew we wanted to get married, but the church that we were going to, they just wouldn't honor, like you couldn't get married in the church if you hadn't dated a full year. They really felt like as a protection for couples that to take your time, date a year so that you have an opportunity to
really get to know the person.
To get to know somebody, because people can fake for a while.
Yes.
But it's a little harder.
Yeah. Tim always said the 3-year rule.
Oh, 3 years. Yeah.
The first year you meet their representative. The second year you meet the real person. And the third year, like, can I live with this individual? Can I really be with this person with the toe jam and their little quirks or whatever it is, the way they chew food? Like, can you do it?
Yeah. So 12 months seemed like, but that's probably even a fast track compared to the 3-year rule, right? Yeah. So we actually went to the church and said, hey, we want to get married. This is the situation. If, because we considered, hey, maybe we could get married and then submit, for like a spousal visa. Yes.
Yeah.
So, but the church said, they just said, don't let the situation dictate the process. Like, if this is the Lord, honor the process. And so he asked me to marry. We got engaged right before he left. And then he went back to England, and we submitted paperwork for a fiance visa. It took about a year to go through. So, and that was before like FaceTime or anything like that.
Texting.
Yeah, none of that. It was just phone calls.
It was phone and maybe email. Yeah.
Yes, long distance phone calls too. So you had to be careful with that because it was expensive.
Yeah, because that's international.
Yeah,
That's
international.
moolah. Still a lot of money to call international on cell phones.
Yeah, so I went there twice over that year to visit. I brought Brianna with me one time, and I went one time by myself. And then finally, all of our paperwork came through, and so I met him in 2000, and then by the time he came back, it was 2002, and so it was just about 2 years before we got married.
Wow, blessing. And did you get married here in Michigan?
We did. We got married in the church that we were attending. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that.
And then after that, where did you moved to? And
we had an apartment in Farmington and for about a year and a half, and then we bought a condo in Southfield, and we lived there for 6 years before his company moved him to Cincinnati, and we moved down there. Yeah.
How long were you in Cincinnati for?
Just about 2 years. It was 2010, and right when all of the downturn was happening.
Yeah.
And his company moved all of the engineering from Farmington down to Springboro, which is kind of it's kind of in between Dayton and Cincinnati. But so we moved the family down there for 2 years. But I do want to back up to say about getting married to my husband, because I feel like, so we were both Christians and followed God. And I would say that I thought that since we did everything by the book, that guaranteed us a happily ever after.
Right. And it did not.
It did not. Did not. It did not. And so
our first year of marriage was really hard.
Yeah.
Financially, spiritually, individually, like everything. Yeah. Everything. We were poor. It was just really hard.
It's tough. It's tough. Like you were saying, just even two lives coming together, trying to make it work, man, woman, everything. And I struggled a lot because I didn't expect to struggle. And so because
thought it
I
was gonna
thought,
be easy.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I married this Christian man, and we, like I said, we honored God throughout our whole dating and courtship, and, did everything the way that, and it wasn't too long after that I was like,
What did
what's
I
happening?
do? Yeah, what's going on here? There's a whole new person.
Yeah, like we had such the cultural differences, I didn't, like, they were very interesting to me, but I didn't anticipate the struggle when we came together as husband and wife, and especially with having my daughter, because the African culture is very different than the U.S. culture, and even what I grew up in, and my husband didn't have any children before, and so having a stepchild too it is harder. There's a harder bonding time for some people there.
Yeah. So she's like 7 or 8 by this
She
time.
was 8 years old, yeah, and she was running the house, and she was perfectly fine with it, just being her and I. And
Right.
so he was kind of an invader, especially he was gone. He was overseas for, over a year, and then we just got married. So it was like
all of a sudden, here's this person.
Yeah.
She didn't get to see him coming by for dates or
Right.
going to church or
Right.
any of this stuff. It's just all of a sudden he showed up and
Yeah.
there he's there. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was really hard for Brianna. It was hard for Maxwell. It was hard for me.
Were y'all praying together as a family?
Yeah.
Were there any I don't know, like new couple things at your church that y'all were trying to get into? Or any support from there?
There wasn't too much of that, and I think that my husband and his culture, or at least my husband, is more of like a man's man,
masculine
and,
man.
Yeah. As far
I think
as
it's a good thing that's how
and,
God made us. Yeah.
and I mean, there were times when he had reached out to maybe some mentor type men in our church, but and we both were Christians, but we really weren't finding that groove of really seeking God together, where we were getting on the same page.
Yeah.
And we were
bringing the marriage together with Jesus, right?
Yeah. If it wasn't for Jesus, I know that we wouldn't have made it, because we both had that conviction and absolute honoring God.
Right.
But we just struggled because we were both broken people too. And I didn't realize how much I thought I had been healed from so much of my past, but until I got married and in that relationship, that I realized that there were still a lot of things in me that
God needed to be healed.
Yes.
Jesus needed to reshape.
Yes.
And renew. Yeah.
100%. Yes. Yeah. And so it was tough. We struggled a lot for a long time.
Yeah, I find the first, my mama, she was 104 when she passed. She got married at 19, and she said the first 5 years are always the hardest. And my grandfather moved them to Oklahoma, and his dad was a drunk and a sharecropper. So you do all this farming work all year, and then you would have to give it to other people and pay off leasing the land, basically. So you'd basically have nothing left. And she said they went down there and lived for about a year and a half, and they lived in a duplex. And the other side caught on fire, burnt everything down. Her wedding pictures, like everything that she had, like just a little bit of materialistic things that she had, and it was gone. And she said that her and my grandpa Frank barely got out of the house, and they didn't want to live like that. So then they went back to Fort Worth, and he got a job with her dad building the railroad in Texas, basically, in Fort Worth and stuff through the state. So, that's funny how you said it was just really hard to get on the same page and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
And everybody always says, I always hear, through marriages that make past a decade or 12 years or 15 years, if you can make it through those hard seasons, you start respecting the love changes. And how Jesus says, once you get married, you come together as one, and you should be together, he kind of looks as a bride as a church. Well, then we should, always unite under that kind of, which means you pray together, you read the word together, you pray for each other. I find when I get upset with Tim, I start praying for the good things about him, so I don't like upset, like, you use Fabuloso when I don't like that stuff around my nose. Just little things or big things too, but I start really just trying to pray, and that's new. Again, that's something new for me.
Yeah, God has really revealed a lot. I didn't realize, when those generational things and the strongholds that are just there, and I really believe that it's a lifetime of working through those and a continual healing as God reveals those things. Because I didn't realize how self-dependent or self-protective I was.
Right.
Of not really, like, if you would have asked me, I would have thought that everything was okay until, like, God just really broke me down and revealed and just showed me how much I wanted to ensure that I wouldn't be hurt and, really tried to control certain aspects of our relationship, our marriage, to protect my heart. And even the last year specifically, God has just really broke me to a place of surrender, of releasing any part of me trying to protect, me trying to control a situation, and honoring my husband. Even, it doesn't mean that I have to agree with everything that happens, but the way that I respond, the way that I talk to him, to do it with honor as unto the Lord. And that's really it's really actually transformed our marriage with just that revelation for me.
That's beautiful. Because it really is. Like, when God, I find too, like, the problems that I had with people, it was insecurities. Like with my parents, I have insecurity for so long. I cared so much what they thought. And in the beginning of our marriage, I would actually put them first in front of Tim. And he kind of did the same with his parents. And so that's why I feel like our marriage was so rocky the first 5 years. And then we just couldn't get pregnant. And then it wasn't until 8 years that we had our first child. And that didn't happen until after I started walking with the Lord. So it was like he shut that down and wouldn't even let that open up until I surrendered to him and started looking within. And now he's just asking more and more. And I'm like, I need to do more. Give me the strength, give me the energy of Samson, give me the knowledge of Daniel, and give me the courage and leadership of David. And I just pray these things. And I just pray it because I know that I need it. I can't be the best daughter of Christ and a great wife and a great mom and then also a disciple if I can't surrender it every day to God. And I just try to tell myself, I'm like, don't wear your drama or the pain of your heart out in public. Leave it at the prayer. Leave it at your prayer spot. Leave it at the bloody feet of Christ in a sense. And when I close my eyes and clench and cry through prayers, sometimes it's like I'm there, and I'm like, you did this for us. You gave all of this to wash this sin away. I need to be strong like you, and I know I'm not you, but just fill me with the Holy Spirit to get me through this season, or to grow with you, or this reshaping. Because with blown glass, I always say this: you put it in there, and man, it gets hot, and it's this bright orange. But then when it comes out, it starts hardening and turning different colors, and then it can be bent, and then reburnt and bent and reburnt again to make something beautiful. And I just feel like that's a process that's going to take our whole lives. It's not going to be done until He says it's done and brings us home. Like, how do you feel in your marriage today with God growing all these years?
Yeah. I've come a long way. Our marriage has, and I think that I have come to a place of trusting God completely. We still have our struggles, but I am finally at a place, and I pray that I never leave this place of total surrender, of trusting God, because nothing is guaranteed in this life, and everybody has free will, and anything can happen at any time, even if you like. I feel like as Christians, sometimes we feel like if we make all the right choices, if we choose the right people, it kind of like guarantees us, kind of like how I talked about before I got married. If you make the right choices, it will kind of guarantee you a happily ever after. And even in marriage, even in life, like people that maybe you would think have the highest integrity or the strongest faith, they can fail.
Yeah.
And I am at a place now where I believe that whatever comes my way, I know that God will take me through that, and He will provide for me, and that I will be okay in it. And so in my marriage, I think that I felt guilty for a lot of years because my oldest daughter struggled to really bond with my husband. My husband struggled to bond with her. I was caught in the middle. I wondered if I made a wrong choice. I thought she didn't have her own dad. She had the rejection of her father. And then
And that's just hard.
it's
That's not something that she chose. And that's not even something you chose, really. You didn't
Right.
choose for him to leave.
and I thought that by marrying my husband that I was giving her
A father
a
figure.
father,
Yeah.
and I didn't anticipate the struggle that would come along with it. And so I struggled for a lot of years with parenting through guilt, with being resentful towards my husband, because I wanted him to
Be softer with her.
yeah, to act a
Yeah.
certain way. And I think I was trying so much to control the environment instead of really trusting God. And my daughter has, I see God working in her life. She's going to be 28 in a couple months, but she has had a lot of pain with her dad leaving and not being a part, and with the relationship that we've had growing, or with that Maxwell and I had, and her growing up, and just not really having a father
Yeah.
that she felt loved
And connected to.
and connected to.
Yeah.
And I know that affects the way that we look at our Heavenly Father, that we look at God. But
It's hard to take God as the father if you didn't have a human father. But in a sense, and this kind of burned my dad a few months ago, and I just said, well, God is my father. And it's like, you're my dad on earth, but God is my provider. He's my comforter. He is the Omega. He is my father. He will provide. And it upset him, you know, and then he started challenging God in a sense. And we'll see how that plays out because God's working right now. But I just pray every day that to soften his heart and to bring him back. And instead of getting angry, because this is the first year where I've tried not to argue with them and just kind of let things roll over and let God work on that. How's their relationship today?
it's getting better and better, and I
Yeah.
would definitely say as I pulled out of trying to control everything, and when we moved to Cincinnati in 2010. We were there 2 years. My daughter graduated high school in 2012, and then my husband got a job at General Motors, so that brought us back to Michigan. But my daughter was 18, and kind of got ripped out in high school. She was just getting adjusted, and she was 18, and you can't make them do anything when they're 18.
No.
And she said, I'm staying here. And so she stayed in Cincinnati, and we moved back to Michigan. And so that's already been like 10 years. It'll be 10 years this year. And that we haven't lived under the same roof. And she grew up in church from the time that she was 3 when I got saved. But as soon as we made that move, she, really went her own way.
Yeah.
And I was always trying to like draw her back. I would like send her scriptures and text messages and everything, but all that did was push her away. And until the Lord just really got a hold of my heart and said, just love her where she is, and trust me with her.
You're right.
That I love her more than you do. Just love her and trust me. And so as I began to really just kind of draw back, love her where she is, not put pressure on Maxwell to like try to be the dad I thought he should be, and really trust God. Over the last several years, there's been a huge softening on both sides. And Bree actually came home for Christmas this past holiday, which she hadn't. We've gone to see her sometimes, but she's never like made the effort to come. Yeah, and I know she's growing and maturing and things. I know that kind of changes things.
And she has a child now.
She does, Micaiah. Yeah. He's 7. Yeah. And and I didn't, that was hard for me too, because I didn't want her to go down the path that I did. And but her having Micaiah actually, she really got serious about taking care of herself and providing.
She sounds like a strong woman, because if she lives out of state and has a 7-year-old. Yeah.
She's strong and strong-willed.
Yeah.
So she's going to do stuff her way.
Yeah.
But yeah, so God has really just if I could sum anything up, I would say he has taught me and continues to teach me to surrender everything to him. And to just trust him above what I see, above the circumstances that I face, and to trust that he is, he's working. And my job is to honor him, to obey the word, and to trust that he's working.
Yeah. And with all of that, how's been marriage with the other 3 children? Because you had a daughter with him as well, and then you had your twin boys at the end of it. And so with all of that, how's that played a role?
So, well, definitely having his own children has changed Maxwell's perspective.
Yeah, because now it's his kid. Now he's seeing it now.
Yes, definitely. And seeing them grow into teenagers, and his heart has definitely softened just with that experience of raising our kids. But I'm just, God has been so faithful for our kids, for our family, and I see the difference of just in the stability with the 3 younger ones of being able to provide the stability to them. And not to say that there's definitely things to trust and believe God for, but God has definitely healed in working in their lives and in our family.
In where one generation.
Where we have I always just desired to have a close family unit. I didn't have that growing up, and I struggled to have it with Bree, and it was almost like, because she was 11 when Michelle was born, and she was 13 when the boys were born. So she was so much older. So it was almost like an only child. An only child, and we didn't really have that closeness. It was always a struggle, and but God is not only bringing Brianna and Makai back into it, but definitely, with our family, there's that level of closeness that I've always desired.
Do you feel like they're close?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
amazing.
get after each other, but yeah, they absolutely love each other and support each other. So
I want to talk a little bit about your ministry and how you started that, because I just kind of feel drawn to that too as well, because I just feel like God had it on my heart for the past few years, like, you're going to do something for me, because when I made a vow to God, when I gave him my life, I said, God, if you heal my marriage and you give me a family, I will do, and you just show me who you and your son are, because I don't understand how you're the father and he's the son. I don't know if y'all are real, but if you are, and you do these things for me, I will follow you and I will do anything you said. So I have followed him around the country. And then the past few years it came to, okay, what am I going to do for you? And I just didn't know how that was going to play out. And, having these babies and like you said, I wanted a close connection with them. I wanted a big family, because I don't have a big family. I only have one brother, and we've never really been close. And then my parents and him live in Virginia. And then all of my older family's all older. I mean, I didn't grow up with any cousins, or I had one cousin. And it just seemed like over a whole generation, everybody just stopped having kids. And my mom also says because they weren't blessed. They walked away from the word, and now they're not blessed. And so, I was just like, God, what can I do for you? I can't leave the house. I can't do all this stuff. I can't go serve or go on mission trips. And I was like, all I can do is speak. And it started snowing in the backyard, in just our backyard. It literally was not snowing on the side of the house. It wasn't snowing in the front. It was snowing in the backyard. And Tim goes, I think God has given you your answer. And so I took that as okay. And then later that year, at the end of the year, I had dropped my first podcast. And so now I've been doing this for over a year now. But I just was just curious about how God placed that on your heart.
Yeah, pretty early on, I always felt this call into ministry, and God has healed me of so much. And every level of healing, I just have this desire to share with others how God has healed me. And so along the way, I always felt this pull, but it just was never the right season, the right time. And even I had been in a couple of there was 2 sermons, different times where I was called out and spoken over and prophesied that that they see a ministry and see God's hand for big things in my life. And, you take that with a little bit of okay, Lord, I see you see me, but I'm not going to put all my faith in that either, And then when we moved back to Michigan and got connected to the Rock Church, it was the very first year they were going to open up the Bible school, that you could take the courses. Pastor Steve started teaching them. And I just felt because I always wanted to go to get credentialed. I felt like I needed, because you can go into ministry without credentials, you don't have to, but I always wanted that. I think validation, that I felt credentialing would bring me. And so I jumped at it as soon as they offered it. And so I took all of the courses and graduated with my certification in ministry. And right as I was graduating, Pastor Angelo met with me because they were wanting to launch a women's ministry. There was some things, but there wasn't really a ministry in place. And it was just God's timing, because that was my passion and a need for the church. And so I was just finishing up and was given this opportunity. And so it was Rock Ladies
Yeah.
at first. Yeah.
I have a
'cause
shirt like that.
with
The
Rock
turquoise
Ladies.
and the pink one.
Yeah.
I sleep in them still. They're my favorite sleep
Yes.
shirts. They're the only ones I sleep in.
Yeah. So it was Rock Ladies, and but very quickly, like I just felt like I wanted to launch Arise, which is a monthly gathering. Like I wanted, you can have events a few times a year, but women can't really connect. And even the name of it, I was just praying for the Lord to give me the name. And Arise is just like rise up, know who you are in Christ. And so that was my heart. And so started with KCD was the first person that came alongside and really helped me get it going. And we started with just a few women coming at the beginning, and we just kept on. Every month we had a rise, and we threw in a few events, and we just continued to be faithful. And God has just really blessed the ministry. Last year through COVID, when we couldn't meet, we were like patchworking it and videotaping and, or like Facebook Live and stuff. And that was a really tough year. And at that time, it had already been a few years under Rock Ladies. And it was just on my heart that there was like bigger.
More.
I want to reach past, obviously the women of Rock Church, but like beyond too. And because hurting women are just my heart and my passion. And so Amanda Alphones, who was over MOPS, was needing to step down from that ministry. And so we ended up connecting and then creating with our leadership team Tessera, which Tessera is a single tile in a mosaic. And it's just on the foundation that we're all broken in imperfect pieces, but placed together we're God's masterpiece.
Yes.
And that afforded us the opportunity to kind of go outside of, because sometimes people think like, oh, I don't go to the church, I can't come.
Yeah.
And so with having Tessera as the name, then we are able to like do
Expand
more with
that. Yeah.
social
People
media.
that are more eerie to walk into a church or scared of it or whatever, don't know what to, or been burned.
Yes. Yeah.
They're going to be more inclined to walk back in or walk in for the first time.
Yeah. And make it where it doesn't sound, and it's absolutely fine to have ministries called, Rock Ministries. It's the Rock Church. But we were able to make the change, and then actually it's been a huge blessing. The church is the one who wanted to make the switch for Wednesday for the midweek, which really has afforded an awesome opportunity for everybody just to have that one consistent day to be at church. We got the sanctuary.
Yes.
With that, which has been, it's been amazing for our Rise, for our monthly gathering. We have an opportunity to reach women. There are women that are coming into Rock Church for the first time, like through Arise, which is just, it's so awesome to see.
These groups are so powerful because that's how I found the Rock, was through MOPS.
MOPS, okay.
Yeah, I came out of the woods with my Huskies, and Katarina, she was only like 9 months old. We had just moved to the house. I said, God, I need a godly friend that's going to help me get to you and get to know you and go to church, because I wasn't going to church. I was barely reading the Bible. I went to Walmart and got me a Bible, and I was like, God, just please find me someone. And we come walking out with these Huskies, and her kids, Tracy's kids, go, it's snow dogs, it's snow dogs, and start running over. And Tracy just befriends me, and I have this like dirty cursing Texas mouth, and I'm dropping F-bombs and all this stuff, and she's just like, do you believe in God? You go to church? I'm like, yeah, I don't go to church, but I believe in God. I'm looking to. She's like, well, we have something starting up in a couple of months. And that's how I started going in there. And then the first service, that was that fall. And then the first service I went to was Easter Sunday. And then we just never stopped going.
Wow.
We've been going to church as a family ever since.
That's awesome.
And we were baptized at the Rock. And we took the Rock Solid courses and all these classes. And it just really changed my heart. And it really just gave me a connection to God. Yeah. Because he wants us to be together.
Yeah.
And he knows even though we're not going to get along, if we bring it to him, he's going to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and having those ministries and opportunities to invite somebody outside of a Sunday service like you had. And that's what we hope to continue to have with Arise too, is, inviting a friend and just praying that the Lord would change a heart in it. So
yeah, I think it's powerful when people can get together and pray, and women can come together and hear a service from a woman, because it's, you don't see a lot of women pastors. But like I said, I mean, the Christianity kind of started through Mary Magdalene. I know this may upset some people when I say that, but Jesus didn't come to one of the guys first. He came to Mary first. And so I just find, I just keep going back to that, saying, Jesus believes in women. Jesus wants to help you rise up. You can spread the word. It doesn't have to be just a man. And I just take that to heart. And so that's why I wanted you to come today, because you have such a beautiful testimony and you've been so faithful to God and you're so successful. And I'm not talking about money successful or job successful, but I mean, you have 4 children, you have a successful marriage. You know that it takes the word to wash over it and to humble yourself and to pray about it and to just stand with God and sit still sometimes. And I just find that powerful.
Oh, thank you.
And then to have the ministry. It's touching a lot of lives in this community. It really is.
It's a blessing.
It really is. So just tell us real quick about how women in the Macomb, Chesterfield, New Baltimore area can find the Rock Church in Tessera.
Absolutely. You can go to rockchurchnow.com and you'll find all of the different links to the ministries that we have under the women's. You'll find Tessera. We meet on the 3rd Wednesday of every month at Rock Church. The doors open at 6:45 p.m. and we usually get done right around 8:30. So it's a fantastic time. You can just drop in, even if you aren't a member, even if you don't go to Rock Church, you can come on that 3rd Wednesday. We meet in the main worship center, and we would love to be able to have anyone who's interested, any lady who's interested.
Any lady that wants to come.
They have stand for the men. They have their own gathering on the same Wednesday, the 3rd Wednesday, but Arise has been a
So if you have a married couple, both of y'all can go.
Yes.
It's open for, I've seen the men in there are barbecuing outside. When I pull up, I'm like, where's the barbecue for the women? Throw us some brisket. No, I'm just playing.
On Facebook, you can look up Tessera Ministries, and then we put up all of our events, and the upcoming Arise are listed as well. So you can find on Facebook as well.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
If you don't mind, I'm just going to end with prayer.
Absolutely.
Real quick. Yeah. Dear God, just thank you so much for bringing Julie here today and just sharing her powerful story and walk with you and all the just beautiful miracles that you've washed over her life. And now she's washing over others. And we ask that you just lift her up and lift others up out there, and just pray that if anybody heard this and is just thinking about you or wondering about you, that you just bring them a miracle, a blessing, and some way, somehow, just bring them to the word. Just have them just be pulled to your book of life and just let you wash over them. And we just thank you so much for this opportunity and of filling us with the Holy Spirit. And we ask that you just bless all of those Christians out there who are looking to take a leap of faith with him and just need that. And may you fill them with faith and courage and love. In Jesus' name we pray all of this. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Amanda Mendoza Hawkins at the Tex-Mex at the Northern Border.